Hello, so this one is about Wicca by Muriel Emerson. Actually, I know I have a lot of friends who consider themselves Wiccan. Um, so this is just me exploring what exactly being Wiccan means. I've done it with some of the other religions as well, so. Wicca is a modern-day nature-based pagan religion. Through rituals and practices vary among people who identify as Wiccan. Most observations include the festival celebrations of solstices and equinoxes, the honoring of a male god and a female goddess, and the incorporation of herbalism and other natural objects into rituals. Wiccans practice their religion according to an ethical code, and many believe in reincarnation. So, what is Wicca? Wicca is considered a modern interpretation of pre-Christian traditions, though some involved claim a direct line to ancient practices. It may be practiced by individuals or members of groups, sometimes known as covens. Wicca also has some commonalities with Druidism in its environmental component, and is considered the inspiration of the goddess movement and spirituality. There's a great diversity among individuals and groups that practice a Wiccan religion, but many are duotheistic, worshipping both a female goddess and a male god, sometimes referred to as Mother Goddess and a horned god. Other Wiccan practices are atheist, pantheist, polytheist, or respectful of gods and goddesses as archetypal symbols rather than actual or supernatural beings. Rituals in Wicca often include holidays centered around phases of the moon, solar equinoxes, and I cannot say that word right now. Elements such as fire, water, earth, and air, and initiation ceremonies. Margaret Murray. The rituals of modern Wicca practice can be traced to famed first-wave feminist, Egyptologist, anthropologist, and folklorist Margaret Murray. She wrote several books on medieval religion centered around witch cults in medieval Europe that inspired British seekers to create their own covens and structure worship around her descriptions, starting with 1921's The Witch Cult in Western Europe. Later, scholarship disputed Murray's claims about witch cults, but her influence could not be erased within Wicca. Gerald Gardner. Wicca was first given a name in Gerald Gardner's 1954 book Witchcraft Today, in which he announced it as Wicca, the extra C being added in the 1960s. According to Gardner, the word was derived from Scots English and meant wise people. I have a quote from him up there. The witches are firm believers in reincarnation, and they say that once a witch, always a witch. Gardner, considered the founder of Wicca, was born in 1884, north of Liverpool in England. A world traveler with an interest in the occult, Gardner first heard the word Wicca used in the 1930s when he became involved with a coven in Highcliffe, England. He was initiated into the group in 1939. In 1946, Gardner bought land in a village of Bricket Wood to establish a center of folklorish study that would serve as headquarters for a coven of his own. Gardner died of a heart attack in 1964 while on board a ship of the North African coast. He was buried in Tunis. Only the ship's captain attended. In 1973, his extensive personal collection of artifacts was sold to Ripley's Believe It or Not. Aleister Crowley. Um, Gardner met famous occultist Aleister Crowley in 1947. When Gardner formally wrote about his Wiccan rituals, he drew strongly from Crowley's own, dating back to 1912. The two men had similar ideas. Crowley had, in 1914, proposed the idea of forming a new religion that would pull from old pagan traditions, worshipping the earth, celebrating equinoxes and solstices, and other hallmarks of nature-based worship. Book of Shadows. Gardner's fantasy novel High Magic's Aid, published in 1949, is considered one of the first standards of Wicca. But his Book of Shadows, a collection of spells and rituals, is central to Wiccan practice. Written in the 1940s and 50s, initiates were required to make their own copy by hand. The origin of the title is unknown, but some believe he borrowed it from the work of a Scottish children's book author, Helen Douglas Adams. Doreen Valiant. Future Wiccan leader Doreen Valiant met Gardner in 1952 when she contacted him following an article in Illustrated magazine that presented to their readers the reality of covens and their practice in the context of normal, educated people. Oh.
Grab your seat on the couch because the best part is, as an HBO.
The TV just got loud all of a sudden, so I had to go turn it down. Okay, so under Gardner's direction, Valiant would revise the Book of Shadows for more popular consumption, exercising Crowley's influence. In 1957, Valiant split from Gardner's coven, with other members and rituals to Gardner sprang up, each with a coven of their own. Valiant would become a prominent Wiccan advocate. And Raymond Buckland. In 1963, Gardner initiated British extradited and Long Island resident Raymond Buckland, who founded the Gardnerian Brentwood Coven, considered the first Wiccan coven in the United States. Buckland became a vigorous promoter of Wicca in the United States. In the 1970s, moved to New Hampshire and developed Sax Wicca, which involved Anglo-Saxon mythology into Wiccan practice. Symbol Leap was popularized of Wicca in America, claiming to be a hereditary witch. Leake became involved in a New Forest coven in the late 1940s, continuing her practice through several covens in New England before moving to the United States and settling in Los Angeles. Leake transformed her Wiccan practice into celebrity status, entered around astrology, writing numerous books, and a regular column in Alexander's. Alexander's founded a strain known as Alexandrian Wicca in 1960s. Known as the publicity seeker, he catapulted to fame following an autobiography and a film in 1970, Legend of the Witches, called The King of the Witches. Sanders typically pushed myths about his own lineage, claiming royal ancestry and aligning that his grandmother was not only a Wiccan, but had learned a strain of witchcraft that supposedly originated in Atlantis and involved King Arthur and Merlin. Sanders attracted a younger generation of followers, and the lurid stories about him are considered to have had the effect of popularization Wicca as an alternative lifestyle in the 1970s. Laurie Cabot. I have a quote from her up here too. Religion is about creation, and for that reason, religion should be about the earth. Laurie Cabot, the Witch of Salem, began to gain attention in the United States in the late 1960s. teaching classes at Salem State College, and helping police solve cases. Her occult store in Salem is one of the first in America, and she established a popular witches' ball. Governor Michael Dukakis declared her the official witch of Salem in 1977, and in 1986 founded the Witches League of Public Awareness. Wicca and feminism. In 1970s saw the American version of Wicca transform from the magic-based pagan discipline claiming British heritage to a nature-based spiritual movement with heavy tones of environmentalism and feminism. In turn, this influenced the religion in England. The feminist influence in Wicca strengthened in the 1970s and 1980s, brought about by women who had entered the religion attracted by the female deity and were faced with misogyny reality in the religion's ranks. In 1971, Wiccan advocate Z. Budapest started the Susan B. Anthony Coven, which practiced Dianic Wicca, a form of maternal lunar worship. Budapest wrote the Feminist Book of Shadows. A number of feminist covens were outgrowths from Budapest Coven. Wicca and the law. In 1986, Wicca was recognized an official religion in the United States through the court case Detmer versus Landon. In the case, incarcerated Wiccan Herbert Daniel Detmer was refused ritual objects used for worship. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that Wicca was entitled to First Amendment protection like any other religion. In 1998, a Wiccan student in Texas enlisted the aid of all of the ACLU after the school board tried to prevent her from wearing Wiccan jewelry and black clothes. The board reversed its view. In 2004, the Indian Civil Liberties Union fought to reverse a judge's decision that divorcing Wiccans were not allowed to teach their faith to their sons. In 2005, U.S. Army Sergeant Patrick D. Stewart became the first Wiccan serving in the U.S. military to die in combat. His family was refused a Wiccan pentacle on his gravestone. As a result of the court case, initiated by the Americans United of the separation of church and state, Wiccan symbols are now accepted by the Veterans Administration. The number of practicing Wiccans in the United States has proven difficult to estimate, with sources